Hello and welcome to Swiftly Spoken, a fan-made Taylor Swift podcast in which we analyse her artistry, including her lyricism, music videos, and full album retrospectives. We are your hosts Cameron and Lisa, and in this episode we're going to be discussing all of the details behind the song This Love after the release of Taylor's version. Okay, so in this episode, we're going to give some of the interesting facts about this super underrated 1989 song and give our fresh thoughts on Taylor's version of the song, while also discussing the new merchandise and what this means going forward in terms of the Taylor's version releases.
Is the only song from 1989 that was a complete solo write by Taylor. She has collaborators on all other songs on that album, so obviously this is a very special song for her. It was also the first song that was written by Taylor for that album, long before the album had a theme to it, or even the Grammy Awards, them fateful Grammy Awards that changed everything and led Taylor in the specific direction for 1989.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that this is kind of the first 1989 song, and the fact that when Taylor kind of changed up where she was going with the album, and after the Grammys wanted to kind of go with a pop kind of driven 80s sound called 1989, that she kept this song that was written, so long ago. And it's interesting whether maybe its original production was slightly different, or whether this was the original production that it had back when it was originally kind of written, whether, Taylor kind of changed up the song a little maybe to fit 1989 or not. But it's really cool that this song survived that change in her kind of album theme and concept and lived on, and then was put on 1989. And I'm really glad it was, especially as it's a solo write. Solo writes are always so kind of special. They always kind of have this, there's something about them, the solo Taylor writes, that are just really kind of unique and just have this feeling about them.
Yeah, I agree, and I think Taylor agrees as well. She always feels very, very, protective of those solo rights. In, the Lover era, she always was like, oh, Lover, Cornelia Street, them, my babies.
Okay, so according to the original draft that was featured in the Lover Diary deluxe versions of Lover, the song is dated to October 17th, 2012, which is actually 5 days before the release of Red. So technically, Speak Now Taylor wrote This Love, which is
Yeah.
madness. Like
If we divide eras by album release date, yeah, that's correct. Technically, Speak Now Taylor wrote This Love.
Yeah, which is just madness. Like,
And very
just,
ironic considering everything that's going on right now.
exactly, yeah, it is. Yeah, and also this song was written in LA, as that is kind of written at the top of the handwritten lyrics. And it's really, I was so glad in the Lover era that we got these diaries. We got so much kind of time stamping and stuff put on songs, or kind of experiences that Taylor was going through and life events. And I'm really, really glad that she did that and gave us a kind of real look into her diaries and when stuff was crafted and created. So looking at these original lyrics then that are featured in the Lover Diary, there are some original lyrics that were not featured in the then released version of 2012. And one of these is twisting, turning, try to keep warm with someone new. And then there's another slight lyric change, which is but you come back to what you need, you're what I need. So these were some of the original lyrics. Do you like these lyrics? Are you glad that they were taken out, or do you wish that they were kind of included?
I actually prefer the ones that were changed. Well, one was completely scrapped. That "You're What I Need" was scrapped. So I don't think we really needed that. But the other one, that twisting, turning, tried to keep warm with someone new, which was changed to tossing, turning, struggled through the night with someone new. I kind of prefer that, because tried to keep warm is one thing, but you're struggling. You really want
Yeah,
thinking of the other person, and you can't get through it. So I prefer the release. What about you?
yeah, I do as well. But I quite like the idea of the warm, because I suppose it's from the lantern burning thing.
Oh
And that's where
yeah,
I think
that's
maybe
true.
that came from, the kind of the warm element. But I think that yeah, I think the actual release version is better, rather than try to keep warm with someone new, but it makes sense why that was the original lyric, because it does match with the lantern burning. And yeah, I prefer tossing, turning. It kind of, the tossing element feels like, with the clear blue water, it feels like a ship, with the high
True.
tides, rather
Yeah.
than the twisting. I prefer the tossing. It feels a bit, it matches
It
with the kind
kind
of
of,
lyrics
yeah.
of.
It sews it all together in a nice little thematic, kind of the water going in and out, which is
Yeah,
the song itself, isn't it? Like, it's
yeah,
good, it's bad, it's like the ebb and flow of tides, really.
yeah, exactly, yeah. But no, I really do love this song. I think that it's so underrated, and I think now it's not that's not going to be the case anymore. Because I feel like
No.
it's getting a lot of attention and appreciation now, which I'm really glad about. But for years, this song was very underrated, and even its like performance on the 1989 tour, I've always loved. Um, so I'm really glad that it's kind of getting the attention that it really deserves now.
Talking about Taylor's version, there are a couple of little lyric changes or additions that I heard when I listened to it for the first time. These are that in the original version, um, they're so tiny and like so silly, really, but I just thought they were interesting. In the original version, when she says, "Lantern burning flickered in my mind for only you," she actually doesn't say for that for. She says, "Flickered in my mind, only you." In Taylor's version, she does say that for.
Oh, that's interesting.
Um, and the second thing is that in the second verse, when she says, "And I can go on and on," she actually says, "Baby, I could go on and on." So that little addition of baby, randomly.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it was not so much the case with Red, but I did find with Fearless. I think Superstar, um, there was a couple of lyric changes and stuff that I was like, oh, um,
Yes, also in You Belong With Me, a couple of
yes, you
words.
belong with me. Like, I'm in my room rather than I'm in the
Exactly.
room. So it is
They're
interesting
these
how,
tiny little,
yeah,
words, but they're interesting for, I mean, someone who's just listening casually is never going to pick that up, I don't think, and it doesn't really matter. But for long-term fans, I think they're kind of like interesting little nuggets
yeah,
um,
and
to
weirdly,
see.
like especially with the "You Belong with Me," it was almost like that was what I thought the lyric was anyway. I'm in my
Yeah,
room, so it's
right.
almost like she actually changed it to what people thought it was anyway, and probably should have been. Then I'm in the room.
Yeah.
It's interesting how yeah they kind of change up, and whether those are intentional or just purely accidental when she's singing them is interesting. But yeah, it's cool that there's a slight differences.
Another fact that we mentioned previously in our Why She Disappeared poem analysis video is that this song was actually first written in the form of a poem. Taylor said that the song it started off as a poem that she was just writing in her journal. She was writing about things that had happened in her life. She kind of put the journal down on her nightstand, and then suddenly she was hearing these melodies in her head, that went with the words that she'd just written, and in the end, it became a song.
Also, This Love is the only song on 1989 that was produced by Taylor's longtime country producer Nathan Chapman, who she had collaborated with on her previous 4 country albums. However, the Taylor's version is now produced by Christopher Rowe, who produced a lot of Fearless and Red Taylor's version, and he seems to take over from Nathan Chapman and is
Hmm.
producing a lot of the songs that Nathan Chapman originally produced. So, what do you feel about this change? I know we mentioned it a little bit in the kind of Red episode, but how do you feel about
Mm.
the change from Nathan Chapman to Christopher Rowe?
Yeah, it's interesting to see how Christopher Rowe has kind of taken on the burden of being the Nathan Chapman of back
Yeah.
then, the country kind of producer. Because obviously for more poppy things, we've got Jack, Aaron. And I think something interesting that we should mention here is that Nathan Chapman and Taylor don't seem to have any bad blood. I think that not being able to collaborate together for this probably would have gone against maybe Nathan's contracts, or he's quite loyal to Big Machine because they do give him a lot of work, and he works with a lot of country artists within that sphere.
Yeah.
However, he came out and defended Taylor not long ago.
Yeah, no, it's interesting how he's kind of been replaced by Christopher Rowe, but there isn't any bad blood between him and Taylor, and that he still has a lot of respect for her, and I can imagine that she has the same for him. Because at the end of the day, he really helped craft her sound, and especially those first 4 albums, they really have that Nathan Chapman feel to them.
And especially
Um,
Speak Now.
Yeah, especially Speak Now, who he did the majority of the album, or all of the album really, with Taylor. So I'm glad that there's still a lot of respect between the two. But Christopher Rowe seems to be doing a really really good job. I was really impressed by how close to the original This Love sounds,
I
and I
agree.
think
I
that
agree. I
it
think it
did a
was
really
really, really
really good
good.
job.
Yeah,
And
for
especially a lot
sure.
of those Red tracks as well sound very very close, and all the Fearless tracks as well. So yeah, they're doing a really really good job of emulating that original kind of sound.
as we mentioned, Taylor has been always quite fond of this song. She said previously that I think the one that I keep going back to over and over and over again is a song called This Love, actually, when asked which song was her favourite from the 1989 album back in 2014. She described it as being kind of hypnotic in a way, and it kind of is somewhat romantic and wistful and relaxing.
Okay, so it's also worth mentioning that the hidden message on the 1989 album CD booklet for This Love is timing is a funny thing. And also on the 1989 tour, This Love was part of the set list, and it featured until the final shows in Australia, when it was unfortunately cut from the set list, which I think is such a shame that it was cut. It was really interesting with the 1989 tour how lots of the kind of set list did change quite a bit. I
Yes.
remember when All You Had to Do Was Stay got cut, and then kind of a White Horse acoustic was kind of then put in the set list for a bit. It was really interesting that Taylor was really playing around with the set list, but I was so sad to see This Love go for a period of time.
And these last 2 points that we've spoken about are things that Taylor has spoken about in her 2 little posts. That's what we've got from her. Announcing the release and for the release of This Love. She mentioned that it was always a song that, was very dear to her, so she was very emotional about all of this and how it was going down. And then she also mentioned, as it was released at midnight, that she had very fond memories of performing it on the 1989 tour. I thought that was interesting to see that she mentioned that specifically.
Me too, I did think that as well, and clearly Taylor really enjoyed kind of performing this song. If the fact that she kind of remembers that as a real standout moment in the history of this song. And yeah, that was a really, really nice callback, and kind of, and it did make me really appreciate the 1989 World Tour and how fun that kind of period was when Taylor was on tour then, and just how cool that tour was. I generally think that it was one of Taylor's best tours, had such a cool set list and just was so fun. And yeah, I do think that This Love, along with like Out of the Woods, are probably my two favourites from that 1989 World Tour set list. Okay, so now we're going to discuss our opinions, even though we've mentioned them briefly, but go into more depth now on This Love, Taylor's version. So, what are your opinions on it overall?
Well, firstly, it's so random how it all went down. We spoke like 24 hours ago, and we were both chatting about how, quiet everything was, and then suddenly everything changed. So it's
Yeah,
interesting to see how it was teased in a trailer. This time we have it for the adaptation, the book to screen adaptation of The Summer I Turned Pretty. And it's interesting to see that all of the other songs that we've got up to now from 1989 TV, or snippets that we've got from them, have all been featured in trailers for something or another.
yeah.
So that was very interesting. And then I thought, well, okay, we've just got a snippet. And then when I read on and to see that the whole song was going to be released.
Yeah, no, I thought that it was a very slightly random one to pick off 1989. It's interesting that Taylor's really keeping those big singles, kind of,
Oh, yeah.
she's keeping them ready for something. Because yeah, This Love is quite a random one really to release, because it's not, it's probably one of the least well known maybe on that album. So I'm really glad that it's getting the appreciation. But I was like, oh my gosh, that's quite a random one to release. But like you said, it is really interesting that even for Love Story, that was originally teased on the Ryan Reynolds advert. So it's interesting that Taylor's using the way of like teasing and promoting these songs through trailers, and we've never really had that before. So I'm intrigued to see if that is something that's going to continue, or whether it's just for 1989 and these initial Taylor's versions.
Yeah, my thoughts on that is that she's doing that purposefully, because I think she's showing the industry in general that it would be very easy to license her version
Yeah,
of these songs for films, television series, adverts, whatever. Like, she's saying, look, see all the hubbub, look at all of the attention that my songs and the re-recorded versions of my songs could bring to your
if
projects.
yeah, I think that's very interesting. Actually, I do agree with that. I think that yeah, that's very true. That the whole point of this is so that she can own the masters to it, and then the publishing rights, and can choose
Yeah,
where it goes and where it ends up. So
exactly.
I think that yeah, that is a really kind of a very like business and clever move of like, yeah, look, my songs can be included in your songs, in your films and TV shows, and can bring you a lot of attention, notoriety, and my versions, the ones you need to be picking. So no, that is interesting, and I think you're probably right there that that's one of the reasons why Taylor's doing that. Okay, so other than its kind of announcement, how did you feel about? Because obviously we technically have two covers for this
Mm.
album. We had the original one upon its initial announcement, which was of a kind of beach with "This Love Taylor's version" written on it, and then upon its actual release, we got a different cover. So, how do you feel about these covers?
It said like the cover's gonna change with its release. I was like, oh, what are we gonna get? Are we gonna get something special? Are we gonna get like another kind of like Polaroidy thing that she might have taken at a similar time to the Wildest Dreams cover?
Yeah,
And then we basically got a reused photo from a reused photo shoot,
yeah,
which fair enough. She doesn't all of this, to be honest, she doesn't have to do, and it's probably though it is very exciting to get these things and how she's doing it. At the same time, I she must be annoyed that she has to do it all in the first place. So I get that. You know, we don't have to. We shouldn't expect new things and loads of new content for every single little thing that she does do in reference to Taylor's version. But yeah, I was kind of disappointed that it was basically just one of those right for Fearless, right? It's
yeah.
like a
The kind of Fearless Evermore, but
yeah,
mainly the Fearless side of the Evermore photo shoot, because there's like three parts to that photo shoot.
yeah,
But yeah, it's from that stood in front of the like bush. I was, like I said, the initial kind of cover, I was kind of like, oh, okay.
yeah.
Reminded me a bit of the Love Story Taylor's version cover, which was not great. Or
Oh
the You All
no.
Over Me one. I wasn't a huge fan of those covers, but
Mm.
but then when it was changed, when they said that it was temporary, I thought, oh, does that mean that then we're going to get a 1989 Taylor's version cover announcement? And then obviously upon its release, we got that, and I thought, oh, and it's like it's cool, and I think it really works for the song, and that is the photo shoot that keeps on giving. But I
Yeah.
kind of want it to stop giving now. I'm like, okay, we've had
We've had enough.
Evermore, we've had Fearless, we've had Red, and I just don't feel like 1989 can come from that same photo shoot. I don't know. I really, really hope that 1989 is a Polaroid photo shoot like the original. Um,
Right.
and I just don't know if maybe, the Evermore Fearless Red photo shoot is going to work. Because out of the two covers so far, I prefer the Wildest Dreams one. That feels more 1989,
Definitely, for
even
sure,
just with the
yeah.
sunglasses and stuff.
It felt like
Um,
its own thing. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I was hoping that, yeah, we were going to get something quite similar to that for the temporary cover. And also, how do you feel about the white border that's being put
Mm.
around these covers? Because they really kind of contrast with the other Taylor's version covers that obviously don't have anything like that. And I guess that it's trying to mimic the Polaroid feel, but it
Exactly.
doesn't really look like a Polaroid.
Yeah, it's a Polaroid. It's a normal picture posing as a Polaroid picture.
Yeah,
So it's always going to look a bit strange in that case. But I kind of get it. It's like, listen, it's 1989. We've slapped a little board around it. It's a
yeah,
Polaroid. So I guess I would say that's probably why. But yeah, it's not. It was kind of underwhelming to see that, but at the same time, the picture works.
yeah,
And the only thing that I have seen is people believing that the same thing that happened with the Wildest Dreams release, they believed back then that that would be the album cover. And now people also, I've seen a few conversations about people thinking that this will be the 1989 album cover. And not to be, mean or anything, I honestly hope that we get something different, like you just mentioned.
me too.
And I can go with the Wildest Dreams one, but I honestly don't think that this one would be a cover
No,
for the whole thing.
no.
It just
It
doesn't give any 1989 vibes.
No, it doesn't give anything 1989 and doesn't mimic. Whereas the Fearless and Red ones enhanced on the originals and took the
Yes.
elements of the originals and, spun them in a way. Like with the Fearless one, obviously with the hair flipping, and then for the Red one with the kind of shadow over the eyes and the red lips and looking across, that they were mimicked and enhanced upon. Whereas this just doesn't have anything to do with the original.
No, 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 no.
So I hope that this isn't the original, and I don't believe that it is. Isn't the 1989 Taylor's version cover, and I hope that it isn't really. Like I said, out of the two, I would prefer the Wildest Dreams one, but
Mm.
I don't feel like this is the one, because I feel like it would be incredibly lazy to then use that photo shoot again. Yeah, and not even
Yeah.
another section of the photo shoot, because the
Yeah, just
Fearless,
literally the same one.
yeah, like the Fearless and Red photo shoots, as much as they were part of the Evermore one, they were done for
Yeah,
Fearless and
they were
Red.
a specific part of the
Yeah,
photo shoot where it was like, okay, so these ones are going to be dedicated to this, these ones
yeah,
are going to be dedicated to that, and then, well, the rest is just general stuff.
exactly. Yeah. But whereas this one was like part of the Fearless stuff, so I
For
hope
sure.
I hope not. But yeah, it is. It was interesting, and I'm glad that we got another cover. It makes it a bit more exciting and gives them a kind of new life. And maybe we might get, before Taylor's version of 1989 does come out, we might get a couple more like single drops. I know that next week is Friday the 13th, so
Yes,
there's lots of talk about that could be an announcement day or a
it's all
possible
going
release
down.
day. And
Yeah.
I could definitely get on board with that. I feel like now Taylor is back.
Hmm.
Because she's had
Well,
quite a bit of time off, so I feel like maybe now, something could
before
help.
we get too much into that and into discussing all this crazy new merch and what it all might mean, we've discussed what we thought about bits and bobs about This Love, its release and its cover. But what about the song itself? Do you think it
True,
holds up to the
yes.
original?
Yeah, the original. I think it does. I think it really,
Yeah.
really holds up to the original. I find that it's a lot more clear than the original.
Yes.
Taylor's vocals are clearer. The production is more distinct and clearer, not as muffled. And I think that's the case for a lot of these Taylor's versions, that they have more clarity to them. The way that Taylor sings them is more pronunciated. Her vocals are clearer. Other than Holy Ground, I find Holy Ground slightly muddy in its production. I don't know why, but I just do.
Right.
But other than that, I find that all the others are just so you can just. I don't know. You're noticing things. Maybe it's because you're listening to it to try and find differences. I'm not too
Yeah,
sure.
like you're so intently
Yeah,
listening to it. Like no one usually listens to music quite like that.
yeah.
But
But I
I
am.
agree, yeah.
I think that yeah, it sounds really, really good, and I was really, really impressed. What did you think? Did you think the same?
Yeah, I agree. Really liked it. Listened to it, and to be honest, like you said, it is. She does such a good job with these things. I mean, can you imagine having to? Because yeah, she's sung these songs hundreds and thousands of times. The same thing happened with Fearless, and after a couple of listens, it is like the one that you always had. To be honest,
Exactly.
with
That's how
yeah,
I feel about it. Yeah, it's like it sounds the first time you hear it, it's like, oh gosh, this feels like a cover. And then because it's like you're noticing all the slight changes and slight differences, it almost feels like a
hmm,
live version or a different remix.
that's
And
true.
then you get used to that version, then you're like, oh no, this is This Love.
Taylor must feel quite a lot of pressure uh, surrounding each of these already recorded Taylor's version releases because the vault in the end, it can be whatever she wants it to
Yeah.
be. But these re-recorded ones, the ones that we've already had and cherished for such a long time, I think she must feel a lot of pressure, and she is quite a perfectionist. It's very difficult to mimic something so spot on, and I think she does a good job.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think because yeah, if you're not mimicking it and creating and making it like the original, then you're giving people a reason to listen to the original because I think, oh, I prefer the
Exactly.
original.
That's
So,
it.
and the fact that that she can do that, like I have never since Fearless and Red have come out, I haven't ever listened to the originals, even on CD, vinyl,
Okay.
or on my
Hmm.
iTunes, and because I bought them at the time, so listening to them on my iTunes wouldn't give streams, and I've
To be
never ever
honest,
gone back.
there's no real reason to.
No,
There's if there was a big reason, I would agree with you. Like if there was some, for example, Girl at Home. Okay, if you're attached to the original,
yeah,
that's fine. But for the rest of it, they're so similar. They're basically the same song. There's no reason to.
no,
I'm really excited for Debut because I know
yes,
that I always say this, but Debut is a very underrated album, even by myself. I sometimes kind of find myself going back to Speak Now, back to Fearless,
yeah,
and then I might listen to one or two off Debut, and I'm like, oh, this is actually quite a good album.
yeah.
Why haven't I been here in such a long time? But it is quite, her voice is that of a teenager, which
Yeah,
is normal. So it's going to be interesting to see how she kind of emulates that. But yeah, that country accent, will it completely come back for some of those songs?
yeah,
That'll be very interesting to see for sure.
definitely. I
But
think
other
that
than
is
that,
interesting.
and especially for the songs from 1989 and Reputation, I think they're going to be so spot on. Vocal wise, production wise is something different. I know quite a few people were saying that Wildest Dreams wasn't exactly the same as the original recording, but for me in This Love, I found the production to be so bang on.
Me too. Yeah. With Wildest Dreams, I kind of initially I did feel like the production was slightly different, but it's the only version I've listened to now since its release. So
Yeah, so you've just got
so
used to it.
that's just become my Wildest Dreams that that you listen to. But This Love, it was just like, oh, this you could have played me this, and I probably wouldn't. If you just played it in the background and wasn't paying any attention, I probably would have thought it was the original
Mm,
because it
yeah.
sounds so like the original. And yeah, I think that this one so far, out of the two that we've got from Wildest Dreams and This Love, sounds the most like its original version. Okay, so now we're going to briefly talk about the new merchandise that also dropped yesterday, where we had a 1989 and Speak Now collection. So when this was announced, I was in shock. Like, I literally was like, "What? Like, what's happening?" We've got like all this 1989 merch, we've got this Love coming out, and we've also got Speak Now merch. So what do you think about why? So there's so much to talk about with this merchandise that
Mhm.
it's hard to even know where to
It's
start.
what we have is a release of merch that don't have Taylor's version written on it, that are
Yes,
labeled under the old Taylor, and that feature the logos from back in the 1989 era and
and the Speak Now.
maybe that are the original ones. Now, this has got a lot of people thinking that she's got the rights back, maybe.
Mm,
People are also discussing that her caption, where she mentions the turn of events,
yep.
means that she might have got her masters back. Personally, well, until she says anything, none of us really know,
No.
so we could all be wrong. But personally, I don't think she has because it would defeat the object of releasing this love.
The fact that we got that OG logo. When I saw that, I literally freaked out. I was like, "What? Like, we've got the
Mm,
original logo back!" I was so excited. So to be fair, it was more that I was like just so stoked about, and the
yeah,
fact that we got the
no, I've
sparkly
seen a lot of
guitar,
discussion of that. Yeah, yeah.
like that they were the things that and the seagull necklace. It was those things that was just such a nice kind of callback to the original. And yeah, I'm really not sure how to feel about it all and what this means, because the Fearless and Red merchandise, the Taylor's version stuff, everything had Fearless Taylor's version, Red Taylor's version, and had new logos. We didn't have the original,
Mm.
red logo or the original OG Taylor Swift logo. So it's interesting that we've got those in the back now, and what that means. I don't really know much about logos and what rights you have
No,
to certain
it's
stuff.
quite complex because if you notice, I mean, we're deep diving here and probably overthinking something as Swifties we tend to do. If you look at 1989 and Speak Now itself, neither use their original typeface on anything. So the fonts, when she like for the actual title of the album,
Mm,
the fonts aren't being used, but
yeah,
her name, like you said, are the original versions. So the
yeah,
TS or the 1989 merch is in her writing, which is the font from the 1989 era,
yeah,
and obviously the original logo of Taylor Swift, her name. So I'm gonna give my thoughts, but I have no idea about copyright, logos, typefaces, fonts. No. So in my opinion, two things are going on here. Firstly, remember when we spoke about all of this copyright of 1989 Taylor's
yes,
version,
yeah,
Speak Now Taylor's version? Perhaps those papers are still, on the way through because they wouldn't have ever stopped her from releasing music, from what I understand, but
yeah,
they would have stopped her from producing certain types of merchandise items. So
yes,
perhaps that's one of the reasons that Taylor's version isn't appearing on these items. And secondly, the two specific logos or fonts that are in question, one is basically her name, so I guess she has the rights to that because 13 Management must have that at this point.
yeah,
And the other one is made from her handwriting.
yes.
So perhaps that also has something to do with it. That's just me explaining it all away because I feel like if she didn't have to re-record anymore, or if it had all been sorted somehow, or if something had happened, I do honestly feel like we wouldn't have got the re-recording of this love.
Yeah, and see, this is the thing that I found with this is one of the things that I did find interesting was that on the website and stuff, it was listed as like
Mm.
1989 and Speak Now, and yeah, this old
Yes, the
Taylor
old
thing is
Taylor. Yeah.
very strange. And obviously the fact that these logos are back is very strange. But the thing that I've always found is I've always had this slight fear of, oh, what would happen if Taylor did get the rights back to her original masters?
Mhm.
Does that mean
Yeah.
she stops with these Taylor versions? Because technically, it makes them does it make the Taylor's versions redundant? Because people are like, "Oh, well, why do I need to listen to those? Because she owns the originals
Well, this is
anyway."
it. It should be
Obviously,
dividing
hardcore fans,
her work. Yeah.
yeah, hardcore fans would still listen to the to the Taylor's versions. But I've always had this fear of, oh gosh, what if she does get it back? And then, so say if she did get it back, would that mean she wouldn't ever release 1989 Taylor's version, and we wouldn't get all those Vault songs? Like that's the thing that I find that is the saddest, is that
Hmm.
we wouldn't get to hear the Vaults. Um,
Yeah.
so it is
I
interesting.
it's true. I have to selfishly agree because it's like I really want that. But at the same time, I think that if something were to happen, I think she'd give us kind of like a compilation kind of thing of Vault songs that she's already gone through and prepared. Because you've got to remember, these things don't happen in a day. And
No.
something that you've brought up many times is that you believe that, and I completely agree with you, um, that 1989 was started way, way before Red,
Yeah.
or even the Red announcement. And this is just another puzzle piece that kind of shows that it probably was, how things are so prepared and ready to be serviced and that. So yeah, it's all very interesting. I suppose we're very much in the dark, so we're all left guessing, and
Yeah.
that's the worst part of it because a million things could have happened, or nothing could have happened. I think we'll find out shortly,
Mm.
but it does leave us clowning on all
Yeah,
fronts.
I think it was also the caption of like, yeah, the recent turn of events. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, what turn of events? Or maybe she is referencing the copyright problems that they've had. Maybe now that's all resolved, or
yeah.
it's just
I
it is
didn't read
slightly
too much
strange.
into it, but
Mm.
only because I've seen so many theories and stuff. I think I'm still burnt from this recent TS10 theory.
Oh yeah,
People read so much into things when sometimes she's not writing an Easter egg always.
no,
I think the fandom sometimes gets a bit carried away with Easter eggs. But
yeah,
then
definitely.
again, then Taylor will pull out some random stuff that they will be an Easter egg, like the most obscure thing that you've ever heard.
Yeah,
So I don't know.
I think also that
I'm at a loss.
I think people probably wouldn't have read into it if this merchandise hadn't come out with all
That's
its
true. That's
original
true.
logos and no Taylor's version mention on anything.
That's true, and I think Taylor Nation would have known that as well.
Yeah.
So again, I'm very confused about it all. Uh,
Mm.
my opinion is what I said, the reasonings behind it, but again, maybe I'm reading too much into it and explaining
Yeah.
it all away. So the other thing that happens here is it really leaves us confusing if re-recordings still are on the table, which as far as we know, they are.
Yeah.
If they're not, I mean, it'd be completely different. But as far as we know, right now, what will be coming next? Because if she would have
Yes.
just given 1989 merch, I'd be like, okay, well, we know the path that we're on. But including Speak Now merch as well, but no debut or
Yeah.
reputation.
It's really strange because yeah, debut is in elements of the Speak Now
Yes,
merch with the
yeah,
kind of
but there's
the
yeah,
guitar pick and stuff, but not distinct. Not not like a set out debut kind of merch. So it's
yeah,
really strange to pick yeah just 1989 and Speak Now, and because realistically, Taylor might not be able to re-record Reputation until November of this year, but she can still
yeah,
technically release merchandise of it. That doesn't.
exactly. This is it.
So it's really strange, and I think that yeah, and we've known for a while that we feel like 1989 and Speak Now are next,
It's one of the two.
but it's strange that they're still not letting us know. Really, they're still not distinctly saying this is what is next.
It's
And
funny. I don't know if I don't know. I heard a lot of people, and I want to know your opinion on this, talking about a double release.
see, yeah, I've seen this, and as cool as this would be, I would feel slightly overwhelmed if we
I
got a double
agree.
release, and I don't think Taylor would do that because then it would mean that one of them wouldn't go number one because they'd be competing up against each other.
This
You'd
is
be like
it. Even if
competing
you
with
do
yourself.
1 week and then the next, it creates. Imagine if we get, I don't know, 6 Vault songs on each.
Yeah,
That puts us in both cases over 25-ish songs.
yeah,
That's like 50 songs.
yeah, which is a lot to take in. Like I remember when Red came out, 30 songs was
Yeah,
so
that was
much.
so much.
Like it took 2 hours to kind of get just on the initial listen to get through that album. It was a great 2 hours. Don't get me wrong, but it was like it just felt so overwhelming. Of like, oh gosh, you got all these songs, and it felt like a while before I could properly digest all of the Vault songs while also digesting the new versions of the originals. So yeah, I think that a double release would just be insane. That would just be such a volume of music that I think that you would just be competing with yourself really, not not really giving either much time or light because there would just be so much to talk about. So I just personally I don't feel like that would be a very sensible thing to do, and I don't think Taylor would do that. She's very business savvy and very clever. So I feel like that would be a misstep. But I do feel like though these two are coming. I think it would be really strange to release merchandise for albums that are not coming soon.
But now I'm just like, I have no idea what's going on.
Me too, but I do feel like though that the fact that now we have two songs off of 1989, I think that it would be strange to then release, say, Speak Now.
Speak Now, yeah. And we've got a snippet of Bad Blood.
Exactly, yeah. We've got a snippet of Bad Blood. We've got two songs now, so yeah, I feel like I think 1989 is definitely next, but I do think that the turnaround into Speak Now will be quite quick. I think it'll
I
be
agree.
quicker than Fearless to Red.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think you're right with that. But I don't know. I guess we can only but wait and see.
Okay, so we've now come to the end of this episode. Thank you very much for listening, but make sure you follow us over on Instagram at Swiftly Spoken Podcast, subscribe to us on YouTube, and give us a like and review on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts.